Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. That was pretty funny because I hit play or I hit go live and then it just sat there. And I was just awkwardly staring at the camera, waiting for it to count down. And then it wasn't counting down. And then all of a sudden it counted down. And here we are. So that was the most uninteresting story that we've ever told at the start of the show. So how's everybody doing? No one's on yet. Uh, hopefully everyone out there is doing super duper. Isn't that exciting? I didn't even realize it was the 777th episode until I was typing it out, and I was like, I wonder what episode last week was. And I was like, oh, 776. So this is 777. We should do like a gambling episode. Ding, 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 ding. That's the sound of a slot machine. Hello, how you doing, Frank fam? I wonder, is there a way that we could do like a gambling episode? Not a gambling, like no, we're not going to gamble, but I'm trying to think of like if there's like a fun way we could do an episode. Literally, I did not discover it was the 777th episode until 5 minutes, probably 5 minutes ago, about 5 minutes ago now, when I was typing the thing out. And I was like, oh, it's the 777th episode of the Wednesday show. What could we do? That would be kind of like a fun gamble. Not a gamble, but DuckTales. Woohoo. No, we're not doing a DuckTales episode. We could do it. What would be a fun randomization? Oh, I have kind of an idea. We might go with it. I have an idea, but I'm not positive on how it's going to work. What I want you to do, this is how we're going to randomly do it. Start throwing down different ideas for tonight's episode. It could be about anything and everything Disney. Just start throwing things down, and we're gonna possibly do something that does revolve around a jackpot episode. So just start throwing different Disney topic ideas out there, and we're gonna see how this works. I have an idea in my head. I just don't know if it's gonna work or not, but we're gonna attempt it. This is all on the fly right now. Most Wednesday shows are on the fly, but this is really on the fly. Okay, let's get this party started. We are going to start the 777th episode of the Wednesday show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 777th episode of the Wednesday show. Right now, we currently have 7 people who are watching, which is ironic because it is the 777th episode. But as we go through here, hopefully we can get to 77 people who are watching, and maybe we can also try to get 777 subscribers throughout the next hour here to join here on YouTube. But if you have not joined us yet, we are today is 7, then 7 plus 3, aka the 10th, 2024, and I'm your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today we're going to be doing a Disney episode that is going to be completely randomized. It is going to be completely randomized because tonight is the episode 777, and we are going to make this a randomized episode. I don't know how we're going to do this yet, but just start throwing different Disney topics in the chat room. Just that's all I want you to do right now. Just throw Disney topics in the chat room, or different Disney games that we could play in the chat room, and we're gonna attempt something really crazy. But we need audience participation, otherwise we're gonna fail miserably at my idea. But of course, before we get to the really random idea that we have right now, let's talk about our news for the week. First, a bit of news, actually really big news that just came out yesterday, 2 days ago, yesterday, I want to say, is the Oriental Land Company, which is the company that actually owns Tokyo Disneyland. Disney does not own it. They own a major portion of it, and they are also in charge of the creative control. But the Oriental Land Company actually provides all the money for the park, and then the Imagineers do their magic with lots and lots and lots of money because the company has lots and lots and lots of money. But they did announce that they are going to be partnering up with Disney once again to have a brand new cruise ship sailing exclusively out of Japan, but is still going to be built in Germany and will be setting sail in 2029. So That's exciting. So I think a bunch of us are going to have to go out to Japan in 2029 to go explore Tokyo Disneyland along with Tokyo Disney Sea, and then of course do the brand new Disney Cruise Line ship as well. But of course, in addition to that, if you didn't know, we are doing our Saturday in the park every single Saturday over at our over on my YouTube channel at 1 o'clock. Oh my gosh, I cannot think right now. I have this idea in my head for this show, and I'm trying to keep it alive while I'm doing my announcements here. Every single day every single Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern time over on my YouTube channel. If you're not already subscribed over on my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. And of course, as always tonight, if we go into more subscribers, we will go into extra innings. We are starting off at 7,572 subscribers. It would be pretty awesome if we at least got up to 7,777 subscribers by the end of the episode, just to continue our streak of 777777777. But and as always, tonight's episode is my mind is going everywhere right now. I have this idea and I want to keep it alive. Tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. Patreon pals. There are more than 7, but our Patreon pals could use another 777. Okay, so here's my idea. We are going to be going through and we are doing a brand new concept for an episode revolving specifically around randomization, because as it has been pointed out, today is our 777th episode. If someone just came in like right now, like right after we came to the conclusion that it was episode 777, and then they all of a sudden realized like all I was saying was 7777777. A lot of people probably just left, and I thought, who's this crazy guy? And I'm Brent Datch. So tonight what we're going to be doing is in honor of the 777th episode of the Wednesday show. Today it is going to be completely randomized. And how is it going to be completely randomized, you might ask? Well, if you joined us earlier, I did say, hey, I want you guys to go through and throw random topics into the comments below. And a lot of people have been doing that. If you have more topics that you want to throw into the comments below, throw them out there, because the more you throw out there, the more random this thing is going to get. Now, we've done a lot of random episodes in the past. Right now, I'm going to be talking, just kind of explaining things while you guys continue to throw more ideas out there. We have a few people out there who are throwing different things. We want some more. But we've done some random episodes before. For instance, our last few episodes of the bracket series have been completely randomized on what's going against one another. And we've also had some other random things where you guys usually choose the topic. But tonight, we are going even further past that. We are going to go completely random, because you guys right now are throwing random topics into the chat room. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the random number generator, much like a slot machine, and have it's like ching, 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 ching. And what we're going to do is we're going to have it so that random number generator chooses a number between 1 and however many items you guys are throwing in the chat room. And whatever one we land on, that's what we're going to be talking about. And after we talk about that one, then after that, we are going to be going through and talking about a different topic. Maybe we'll do 5 minutes on a topic. Maybe we'll do 20. Maybe we'll do the entire episode on the topic. But it all comes down to what you are throwing into the comments right now. So if you want something to be talked about, even if it's going to be a 5-minute segment or a 20-minute segment, throw them into the comments, because, hey, it's all random tonight and it might be chosen. So right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of go through and figure out how many things we've got being thrown out there. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right now, we've got 11 topics out there. So our first one is going to be between 1 and 11. Let's do this thing here. Random number generator. Pick a number between 1 and 11.
7.
7 it is. Let's go down 7 spots to figure out what our first topic of the night is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, you know what? Wait. It's still going to be that one, but we're gonna make this so it's more like a slot machine. Bing, 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 bing. 7. Actually, that's ironic. That was 7. Holy cow. So our first topic tonight is Disney Quest. Let's do a quick little 5 to 10 minute episode about Disney Quest, and then we're going to go to another random thing. Keep on throwing random topics into the comments, and we will go through as many as possible. But before we get to the next one, we got to talk a little bit about Disney Quest, because Disney Quest is one of those things that most people, most people have either experienced in some way, shape, or form. And I'm trying to figure out, is it here? No, it's over on the other side of the room. I have a thing from the last day of Disney Quest. We went over to the last day of Disney Quest, and they gave us a little final day of Disney Quest thing. So Disney Quest was one of those ambitious ideas that Disney had back in the 1990s. So let's talk a little bit about the history of the 1990s / Disney theme parks / Disney Quest specifically. Because when Disney was going through in the 1990s, they were wanting to build more and more theme parks all around the world. All around the world, statues crumble for me. So they started having things like Disneyland Paris was going to be the first major one. It was coming off of the success of Disney MGM Studios. And then they also had Disney's America. Now, Disney's America was a theme park that was being planned for just outside of Washington, D.C., where people could have a historical twist with a little Disney twist. And a lot of people were so upset, and they said, there is no way in earth we're going to have it so we're going to be going through and having a history lesson put on by Disney when actual history is here. So the idea was shut down, but a different idea was not shut down, and that was the idea of Disney Quest. And one of the amazing things about Disney Quest that most people don't realize is the Disney Quest that was here in Florida was not the only Disney Quest in the world. What? That's right. There was actually multiple Disney Quests around the world, and there was even more multiple Disney Quests around the world that were being planned. However, they never came to be. Now, the only two that actually came around was the one that was here in Florida, and then there was another one that was actually found in Chicago, Illinois. That's right, the birthplace of Walt Disney himself. So when they were going through and they were trying to create Disney Quest, they wanted to have it so it was going to be this theme park that could come to the guest, opposed to the guest coming to the theme park. And they wanted to have it so they were going to put all these different Disney Quests all around the country, mainly due to the fact that they figured maybe we're not going to make the money off of people who are coming to Florida or California every single year. But at this point, people would actually be going in their free time as well. Now, here is the problem that happened with Disney Quest. Disney Quest just was not keeping up with the technology that it could have kept up with if they really tried. Now, if you went over to Disney Quest that was still going on here, not even 10 years ago, it was really cool technology back in the 1990s, but as time would go on, of course, it would start to fail and fall behind the times. Now, if they would have kept up with this different things, it probably would have succeeded. But let's talk a little bit about some of the groundbreaking technology that they had in here. And then it ended up not being as groundbreaking as it once was. So first off, we had Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse for the Buccaneers Gold. Now, in this attraction, you and 4 other people were put into a virtual reality where you were actually piloting a pirate ship and having it so 4 people were using things like the Toy Story Mania guns and shooting different carts all around the area, trying to take down as many pirate ships as possible. Fun fact, people always said you couldn't beat it, but we beat it one time. It was the greatest moment of my entire life. That's right. Sorry, future wife. So that, in addition to that, you had the Jungle Cruise adventure where you were put onto a raft that actually moved around, and every paddle that you had actually mattered, and it actually changed the direction of where you were going to go on the screen. Again, most people said you could never beat this one. We beat this one as well. Another groundbreaking moment. In addition to those 2 things, on the bottom floor of the entire pavilion, you could also have a maze that was going on below you. So there's all these different computer screens on the side. Each one of those was connected to a remote control car that was found below you. So there was like this glass bottom floor, all these different cars, and there was this massive maze going around, and you were trying to find your way through the maze. And it was a really cool experience. And you would either have it so someone else was calling to you saying, go back, go left, go right, whatever. Or you were just like leaving your control, trying to find your truck going, okay, this is the way I have to go to get out of this entire maze. Overall, really cool experience. In addition to those ones on the first floor, up 1 floor, we also had the magic carpets of Aladdin, where you were actually going onto a magic carpet and putting on a virtual reality. That's what they look like. A virtual reality set of glasses, and you would fly around. You would also have the Cyberspace Mountain, where you could actually build a roller coaster. They had the Mighty Ducks pinball game, where you were an actual pinball. What a great place. Why did it close down? I absolutely love this area. With all of those things, we also had Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, which was a game that was part what's it called? Bumper cars, and part like kill your friends, because you could get these dodgeballs and put them into a cannon and shoot them at the other cars, and if you hit a target, the car would actually start spinning around. Oh, it was so much fun. They also had the extraterrestrial alien encounter, and then what was the other one? Remember that one? You'd be up on a ship that was above the air for no reason whatsoever, besides the fact that you thought that you might swing too hard and die, and you were going through and slashing up alien species, and it was fun. It was fun. The whole thing was fun. Disney Quest was one of those things that I just absolutely loved, and I truly, truly, truly miss it every single day. So, fun fact: when I first moved down here, I did not get a job right away. I was living off the royalties of my first book, From Screen to Theme, and then I quickly went broke. And so there were a few things that would happen every single day. One, I would go to the Disney parks every single day. Two, on the way back from the Disney parks, I did not live in this place. I lived in a different place that was down yonder, about 2-3 miles that way. And on the way from the parks to my place, Disney Quest was on the way. So I actually used to stop at Disney Quest quite often, because it was usually open later than a lot of the parks, especially Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, and sometimes Epcot. So when I was leaving those parks, I would go through there and I would play some basketball, work on my game. Hopefully, I just assumed the NBA scouts were out there checking people out at Disney Quest. They never picked me up, unfortunately. And then I would go through, because I had just launched my website, and I would go through on the 4th and 5th floor. They had the Alice in Wonderland Diner with amazing futuristic technology, which was an internet cafe where there were actual computers on there. And I would go through and I would log onto my website from every single one of the computers, because you could. And I was like, maybe, just maybe, I'll get one new person who's following me from this. And I don't think I ever did. Unless one of you guys out there are like, wait a minute, that's how I found you. That'd be the funniest thing in the world. But yeah, that is our quick mini episode of Disney Quest. Now, since we first started playing this game tonight, we had a lot of people who have joined the chat room. Hello, people who have joined the chat room. What we are doing tonight is, because it is our 777th episode, we are playing a slot machine style thing where you are throwing different Disney items into the chat room, and we're doing mini episodes about those specific items. I am going to a random number generator and having it so it chooses a number between 1 and whatever topic, and we're doing a 5 to 10 minute episode about the specific thing that we land on. So let's continue here. We have 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Right now we have 14 different topics here. Let's go through here. Random number generator. Choose a number between 1 and 14. Oh, it didn't. 8. It says. There we go. All right, let's just do our. Bing ding 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 ding. Wait. Bing, 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 bing. Disney Resorts is going to be our next topic here. So let's do a quick mini episode about Disney Resorts while you guys continue to throw different topics into the comments so we can do more fun mini episodes. I kind of like doing fun mini episodes. I talk a lot. So, honestly, if we wanted to, I could have gone for a full hour on Disney Quest, but we didn't. And I'm very proud of myself for being able to cut myself off there. Oh, wait. Disney Resorts. Let's do a Disney Resorts episode. So Disney Resorts have not always been owned by Disney. And I know what a lot of you guys are out there are thinking, what? That's right. So let's go all the way back to the original Disneyland Resort, which is called the Disneyland Hotel. The Disneyland Hotel, which can still be found over in Disneyland today, actually was completely owned by a different company than what it actually is owned by today, which is Disney. Originally, it was owned and operated by a completely different company. Now, the interesting thing about this is when Disneyland was first opening up in 1955, they wanted to go through and they wanted to have it so they wanted to make the theme park experience inclusive, and they wanted to have it so people could enjoy themselves and have it so they were receiving the same level of fine dining or fine whatever than that they could anywhere else when they were on different vacations all around the world, whether they were going to Timbuktu, Hawaii, or just good old Gary, Indiana. I don't know how many people are going to Gary, Indiana for vacation, but some people do. I'm sure they do. So when people are going to go to a hotel, whether it's a Disney hotel or a non-Disney hotel, they want to be treated the correct way. They want to have it so the booking system's done the right way. So if they make a reservation, they get there and they actually have a reservation in place. So they actually have a room for them to stay at. So when Disney was going through and creating Disneyland, they had it so they went to outside sources for a few different things. One of them was food. Not all the food on opening day was operated by Disney. There was some things that were open or operated by Disney, but the majority of things were not operated by Disney whatsoever. That is because Disney didn't really know how the food business worked. They were brand new to this entire game, so they would go through and have different outside companies come in and run the food divisions. That's why if you go back and look at original Disneyland concept art or original Disneyland park maps, you will notice that almost every single thing in that place was sponsored by a different company because it was actually ran by a different company. Fun fact, completely side fun fact, but a little fun fact that we can talk about here is Arribas Brothers, which we probably all know and love, maybe, like the little, like the multi-million-dollar castle you can buy made out of all the diamonds over on Main Street, USA. You can also find it over at Disney Springs. There's also an Arribas Brothers in Mexico over at World Showcase. There's also another Arribas Brothers over in Germany, again, at World Showcase. There are several different spots around the world where we can find Arribas Brothers. And the Arribas Brothers story actually is a very interesting one because I know we're going to get to Disney resorts. Don't worry, I'm getting there. But this mini episode just turned into a full episode. So when you go through and you look at Arribas Brothers now, Arribas Brothers is very well known, especially for the Disney fan. Outside the Disney fan, maybe not as much, but people who go to Disney pretty much know what Arribas Brothers is. And when the entire Arribas Brothers thing started, they went to the 1964 World's Fair, much like the Disney company. Hey. So the way that the 1964 World's Fair would work is they were actually have it so the different people who would work in the pavilions parked at one spot and they were bussed into the main area behind the buildings that they would actually be working at. Some of these people who were bussed in were people like Walt Disney, along with his staff, and then people like the Arribas Brothers, the actual Arribas Brothers that created the Arribas Brothers. Who knew? And so Walt Disney got to know the Arribas Brothers pretty well during the 1964 World's Fair, and he sent out an olive branch to them and said, hey, I really like your stuff. If you guys want to, we have a place for you at Disneyland. And they said, that's great. It's super duper. However, we're doing fine just by ourselves. And they declined his offer. And he said, well, it's an open invitation. So if you ever want to have it a place to stay, we've got a place for you to stay at. And shortly after the Arribas Brothers were going bankrupt, they decided to take Walt up on his offer. And that's how the Arribas Brothers made their way to the Disney parks. So in addition to things like the Arribas Brothers and these different food things, Disney wanted to have it so there was going to be a hotel at Disneyland for people to stay at, and they could actually, enjoy the life of Disneyland. So what they decided to do was they extended an olive branch out to another company, and they said, hey, listen, we don't know how to run a hotel because we've never done it before. We don't know how to do the room booking. We don't know how to do room service. We don't know how to do maintenance. We don't know how to do anything at all. Can you please come in and figure out how to operate a hotel? We can put the Disneyland Hotel name on it, and you guys will be fully in charge of operations. And they said, righty-roo, of course we'll do that. So they came in, they got the majority of the sales from the Disneyland Hotel, and it eventually got to the point where Disney started to pay attention to how the hotel was being ran. And when they started to realize how the hotels were being ran, they said, you know what, I think we could actually do this on our own. So they decided to buy out all the shares of the Disneyland Hotel and have it so that was their own property. So the Disneyland Hotel all of a sudden became the very first ever Disney-owned and operated resort, with the next two that were opening fairly shortly after would be the Contemporary Resort and the Polynesian Resort. Now, the Contemporary and the Polynesian Resort would be the first two Disney resorts fully operational by Disney from opening day and onwards. And then, of course, it would be joined by other things like the Fort Wilderness Campground. And then as time would go on, we would have literally like hundreds of resorts, not just here in Florida or Disneyland, but all around the world as well. So that is a little quick history of the Disney resorts. If you are just joining us right now, we are doing a randomized episode in honor of our episode 777. So just throw a random Disney topic to the comment that you want to learn a little bit more about, and we are doing random Disney short episodes within our bigger episode here. That was our second one. Let's do at least two more. I think we're still at 14. It doesn't look like anyone else has thrown another thing out there. So let's go back to our random number generator and say, roll. Should I tell you what the number is, or should I just go through and have it so it ends up the thing? Okay. Pleasure Island. Ooh, Pleasure Island. It was number 5. Just to have proof that I didn't randomly just go to number 5. Pleasure Island. Let's do a history about Pleasure Island, because the history of Pleasure Island is actually a very interesting history that actually goes hand in hand with Typhoon Lagoon. And we talked about the history of Pleasure Island several times throughout the past, but a lot of people still to this day do not seem to get it. So quick show of hands in the comments below. How many people are aware of who Pleasure Island is referring to? Is it referring to Pinocchio? Let me know if you think it's referring to Pinocchio or if you think it's referring to someone else. Just throw your answers in the comments below. Now, a lot of people are probably like, wait a minute, if you put it that way, he's probably not about Pinocchio, but at the same time, he could be trying to trick us and make it think it's someone else. And I don't know what to do. And now you're just going to vote blindly, and you're either going to be 100% right or 100% wrong. And we'll find out as you start to throw your answers into the comments. But let's talk a little bit about the history of Pleasure Island, the backstory of Pleasure Island, and some of the fun finds about Pleasure Island as well. So when we go over to Pleasure Island, which unfortunately is no longer there, but back in the late 1980s, 1989 to be specific, we got a brand new dance club area here at Walt Disney World. Now, this brand new dance area, I just dropped my pen, and I just like to, it makes me feel smart when I play with it. There's no other purpose than just, So when we were going through and creating, or Disney was going through and creating, they were trying to figure out a brand new nightlife to have it so they could bring people into Disney and not just focus solely on the theme parks, but also focus on other things like downtown Disney area, which at this point had just expanded to, it had just expanded to downtown Disney with the addition of Pleasure Island. So when they were going through and creating Pleasure Island, they wanted to have it so there was a storyline that went hand in hand with Typhoon Lagoon. And we're going to try to go through this as quickly as possible, but at the same time, like a lot of the other things we've been talking about, I might go on forever. So there once was a storm that roared across the sea, catching ships in its path, helpless to flee. Instead of a certain and watery doom, the winds swept them here to Typhoon Lagoon. I know you're thinking, why on earth are you doing the Typhoon Lagoon entrance sign? Besides the fact that 1, it's very impressive that you memorized it. Yes, thank you, I know. 2, you say it all the time, so it's not that impressive. Yeah, I know. But 3, why? Why are we talking about Typhoon Lagoon when the topic is clearly Pleasure Island? I dropped my pen again. Well, because these two storylines do go hand in hand. So the storyline of Typhoon Lagoon and Pleasure Island are connected mainly to the fact that this typhoon has swept through Pleasure Island and it's made its way over to Typhoon Lagoon, and it's picked up lots of different ships in its path, helpless to flee. Instead of a certain watery doom, the wind swept them here to Typhoon Lagoon. So when these winds swept and they went over to Typhoon Lagoon, there are several different things that you can find at Typhoon Lagoon still to this day that pay tribute to the old Pleasure Island, including Mount Mayday, which has the Miss Tilly at the top. Miss Tilly was one of the boats that was docked over at Pleasure Island, as the story goes. However, it's not the exact story because we never actually saw the Miss Tilly at Pleasure Island because Pleasure Island and Typhoon Lagoon opened at the same time. completely besides the point. But when you're going through Typhoon Lagoon still to this day, you can find several different things like the fireworks factory. You can find things like mannequins. You can find things like the Adventurers Club. You can find things like, that's about it. There are different crates and different fun finds all around the area. But what is Pleasure Island? How did Pleasure Island get there? And what is the backstory about it? Well, I love all these questions. You guys are doing such a good job of throwing questions out there. And don't worry, guys, I am here to answer every single one of them for you. Pleasure Island is not named after the island from Pinocchio, despite what most people think. I thought that for a long time, too. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, Pleasure Island. Oh, that's the place from Pinocchio. And that's how I thought when I was a kid. Pinocchio. I had a very weird voice when I was a kid. But it was not from Pinocchio whatsoever, but it's actually named after Merryweather Pleasure. Merryweather Pleasure is a very, 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 very fake man. However, he is a very, very, very real backstory. So Merryweather Pleasure was an eccentric millionaire. In fact, not only was he an eccentric millionaire, he had it so there was a lot of different businesses that he dabbled in. And in addition to that, he had a lot of different things that he would go through and help propel forward into history. Things like the Adventurers Club, marching along we're adventurers, singing the songs of adventures, up or down, north, south, east, or west. The adventurers' life is best, and adventures' life is best. That's the song for the Adventurers Club. Kungaloosh. Completely besides the point. I just like to sing it. So Merryweather Pleasure was a man who had lots of money, and he owned this entire island, which is to be found in the middle of downtown Disney. It was situated between the Marketplace side and the west side. Now it is going to be the location where you can find things like Morimoto or Boathouse, Jock Lindsay's, etc., etc., etc. But right now, we're not focusing on any of those. We are just focusing solely on the past, which is Pleasure Island. So when you go through Pleasure Island, there were several different businesses that could be found there, and they have been transferred into other businesses instead. So now they're nightclubs instead of what they used to be. For instance, there was a fireworks factory, which was now a dance club. There was the Adventurers Club, which was still the Adventurers Club, founded back in the 1913. I want to say it was the exact year. I could be wrong on the year, but I want to say 1913, maybe 1932. I'm going to Google this because this might drive me crazy. What year was the Adventurers Club at Disney Springs founded at? So downtown Disney.
1989. No, according to Disney.
I know that was the year it came out, but we're looking for the year that the fictional club debuted. March 1st, or not March, May 1st, 1932. I had my second guess. So in 1932, he would founded the Adventurers Club, and with the Adventurers Club, he would call in all of his different adventures around the world, and they would meet up for a wild night of partying and fun. Also, by the way, I love the Adventurers Club. I was only able to go there twice, and I'm really, really, really sad that I was only able to go there twice. But Merryweather Pleasure, in addition to doing things like the Adventurers Club or having this fireworks factory or owning a mannequin shop or whatever you else want to have there, there was also a few things here that he picked up around the world, because he was not just an adventurer, he was also a world traveler who just loved to see different things around the world, and he wanted to bring them back to his private island called Pleasure Island. Now, one of the things that he brought back, which I think is hands down my favorite thing of all time, is he had a magical trip to San Francisco. And when he was out there, he saw the Golden Gate Bridge. He went out to Alcatraz. He had so much fun while he was out there. But there was one thing there that he was fascinated by. And he said, I need that on my personal island. And I don't know how I'm going to get it there, but I'm going to get it there some way, shape, or form. And that, my friends, is how he brought over Lombard Street. Now, Lombard Street, you may know as the famous swirly street that goes back and forth. It goes down the hill. But instead of going straight down the hill like most streets in San Francisco, it goes back and forth like this. Most famous for things like Herbie the Love Bug went down it. The Dodge family went down it in 2011 or 2001. So I think those might be the only two famous people that have ever gone down it. I'm sure there's a few others. They went down it in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Ant-Man. No. And the Wasp. Ant-Man and the Wasp. No, just Ant-Man. what was the one where they kept on shrinking the cars down? Was that Ant-Man or Ant-Man the Wasp? Someone help me. But anyways, he wanted to have it so he would bring in Lombard Street. So if you would go to the back side of the comedy club, there was a walkway that would go back and forth, or you could go straight up, or you could go back and forth on this walkway. And essentially what it was it was a smaller version of Lombard Street, and it was used as a way to transport guests who were in wheelchairs up from the bottom to the top. It was the more inconvenient way to transport guests in wheelchairs. There was 2 other paths that they could have taken. They would have been a lot more efficient. However, if guests traveling in a wheelchair wanted to, they could go down Lombard Street. And I heard a lot of people complaining about this because 1, it was out of the way, and 2, it was very windy. But for someone like me who loves little details, I thought it was the coolest thing. There was even a plaque on the wall saying, this was, inspired by his trip to San Francisco, Meriwether Pleasure decided to bring Lombard Street here to his own personal island. So Pleasure Island had so many different references to those different things. It also had it so every single night there was New Year's Eve, and they would count down to the new year every single night for midnight. It confused me quite a bit when I was on my college program, because there was one time where I was like, wait a minute, what month is it? And it was like, oh, it's May. And I was very confused. But overall, I liked Pleasure Island. I liked the details of Pleasure Island. I was not a big dancer, so I didn't really go to the dance clubs that often. I went into every single one of them at one point, just to say that I've been inside of every single one at one point. But I did like the comedy club. I also really, really liked the Adventures Club. Those were the 2 that Brent Dodge on his college program spent a lot of different time at. But overall, it would eventually disappear. And as it slowly disappeared, we first had all the different nightclubs would disappear. Then the Adventures Club and the Comedy Club would disappear shortly after that, back in 2008. And then once all those disappeared, we only had a few things left. We had Raglan Road, which still exists to this day. We had a Harley Davidson shop, which is still not there, but it still exists in that area. And then everything else was slowly demolished and made way for brand new things. But they just kind of give you an idea of where it is. So next time you're there and you want to remember where you could experience this entire wonderland of Pleasure Island, Raglan Road, it's in the exact same spot that it used to be. If you go up to where STK is, that's where the comedy club was. Across the way over at the pizza place, Marie and Enzo's, / that weird place that I've never been in, or I've never eaten at. What's like all the steampunk stuff? That's where the Adventures Club was. If you went down a little bit on the left-hand side where Paradiso 37 is, that used to be one of the dance clubs. And then we had the other dance clubs were over by Jack Lindsay's and over by the Boathouse. So the location's still there. It's just a completely different thing than it once was. Oh, hey. So that is our mini episode about Pleasure Island. Let's keep on going here. We've got 14, 15 different things now. Okay, let's go through here. And the random number generator, this number. Choose a number between 1 and 15. Until it gives us one of the ones, then it's popping up again. 1 and 15. Let's do it here. Bing, 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 bing. I'm trying to get up to it. Bing, 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 bing. Rides that are on both coasts. This is like slowly becoming an Alex episode. She is choosing everything. It's just randomly going to what she's doing. That was number 6. Oh, wait. Rides that are on both coasts. Let's do a quick history about rides that are on both coasts. Again, we have some people who have joined us since we first started doing this episode. What we are doing tonight is we're going through, it is our 777th episode, so we are doing completely random things. You guys are throwing different topics about anything and everything Disney into the comments below. And after we finish our mini episodes about those different things, we're going through and choosing another number completely random from our random number generator. Also, we will see here if you guys have earned any extra innings. You have earned 1 extra inning right now. So this will probably be our third to last thing. So keep on throwing different ideas out there that you want to hear about. Oh yeah, let's talk about rides that are on both coasts. So let's first talk about the history of rides on both coasts, because some people I don't think are fully aware of why there's different rides on different coasts and why rides are the same on both coasts and why different rides are where they are today. So when Disneyland opened in 1955, you have to think about the fact that it was 1955, people, because in 1955 the Disney company isn't that old. I mean, it's like, 32 years old, but at the same time, when you think about what happened in those 32 years, the first 5 years, a whole lot of nothing. Well, a whole lot of nothing that they no longer owned. Eventually, 5 years later, we would get Mickey Mouse, and then for another 9 years after that, wouldn't be until we would get Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So when we got Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, shortly after that, we would get Pinocchio and Fantasia, and shortly after that, World War II would break out, and movies just didn't really exist. So when Disneyland was being planned, they didn't have a lot of movies under their belt to make attractions based off of. So that's why we would get so many original ideas for different attractions, things like the Tomorrowland Speedway, or Autopia, as we call it over there. We get things like Autopia, or we get things like Mine Train through Nature's Wonderland, the Jungle Cruise, different things like that would all come around, mainly due to the fact that movies weren't that big of a thing. And that, I think, was one of the biggest benefits of the Disney company when they decided to create Disneyland, was they didn't have all these movies under their belt. Otherwise, I feel like everything would have been based off of a movie, and I'm glad that that is not the case, because I think it would be a completely different feeling. However, we did have some attractions that would be based off of movies, and the reason they were based off of these specific movies is because these were the specific movies that really existed. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Mr. Toad, or The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, had just come out in theaters 6 years before Disneyland opened up. So it was still a movie that was very fresh in everyone's mind. That'd be like having a attraction about Moana come out. Oh, wait a minute, we just got one. Or Ralph Breaks the Internet. So things like that, it was still fresh in people's mind. It was still a relatively new movie. And at that point, too, we would also have it so these movies would be sticking around for ages and ages and ages in theaters, opposed to now where they're in theaters for like 2 months and then they go out to a streaming service shortly after. So we would have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Snow White's Scary Adventures, and Peter Pan's Flight, along with Dumbo the Flying Elephant. Those would be the main attractions around on opening day for Disneyland. So when they would go through and they would create Walt Disney World, they wanted to have it so they would bring the same attractions over, because they knew that those attractions were already going to be popular. So we got things like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Snow White's Scary Adventures, Dumbo the Flying Elephant, and Peter Pan. In addition to those ones, we would also have a few other attractions that were popular already on the one coast, so they decided to bring that over, like the Jungle Cruise, Autopia. Of course, over here it would be called the Tomorrowland Speedway. And then we would also have things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which would open up in 1959 over at Disneyland. But over here, it would be an opening day attraction in the Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland. So when we would start going through and have it so these opening day attractions were pretty much identical, one thing kind of began, years would take off. One, they started to think, okay, is it really important for us to have attractions in both parks that are going to be the exact same attractions, or do we kind of get away from that a little bit? So when they were also building Walt Disney World, one of the things that they did decide to focus on was having an entire land that was focused on Frontierland. They wanted to have it so Frontierland was more prominent in Walt Disney World than it was going to be in Disneyland. So originally in 1971, there was no Pirates of the Caribbean. In fact, there was no plans for Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean was not even close to being on the drawing board until people started to show up and they started to complain that, hey, why isn't Pirates of the Caribbean here? And when that started to happen, a lot of people started saying, maybe, just maybe we need to add Pirates of the Caribbean. So Pirates of the Caribbean was rushed open, literally took a year and a half, and it would open up in 1973 here at Walt Disney World. So when we started to have new attractions opening up because they were on both coasts, they started to try to play around with the idea of maybe we can have it so we take some attractions away from one coast and keeping them open on the other coast. So when they started to take some attractions away and keep them on one coast, it was kind of a gamble because they weren't really sure how people would react on one coast or another. For instance, in 1998, we would lose Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in Walt Disney World. And when that would happen, a lot of people were really mad that Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was going away. And Disney's statement pretty much said, well, if you want to see it, you can go to the other coast, because guess what? We still have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride here in Disneyland, and that was not suitable for a lot of people. So over the years, Disney started to have it so they would either open the same attraction on both coasts, because some people were crybabies, or they would have it so they were not even remotely close to the same at all, which is the way that I personally like it. I like having attractions that are only in Walt Disney World, that are not in Disneyland, and that are in Disneyland that are not in Walt Disney World, because it gives my trips to Disneyland a little bit more special quality to it. Now, when I go out to Disneyland, I've been out to Disneyland 3 times since Guardians of the Galaxy opened up out there. I've not gone on Rise of the Resistance out there. I've not gone on Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run out there because I know it's the same ride. And for me, it's like, oh, I just did that one on Tuesday back home. So do I really want to go on it right now? Here, when I'm on vacation, I can experience new things. So for people like me who go to Walt Disney World literally every single day, going to Disneyland, it's a unique experience because I can go on these attractions that I don't usually get to go on here. Things like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride or Casey Jr. I love Casey. That's not even a joke. I love Casey Jr. out there. Storybook Snail Boats. And then you can also go on some attractions that are completely the same attraction, but also this completely different, unique experience. Things like It's Small World, Pirates of the Caribbean, Splash Mountain was completely different on both coasts. But that brings us to the real quality question that we have here. Rides that are on both coasts, because there are people that I've talked to who've been to Disneyland and they don't want to go to Walt Disney World because they say, oh, it's the same old rides. And then I've got people who have gone to Walt Disney World and they don't want to go to Disneyland because they say, oh, it's the same old rides. And that's how they talk usually when they talk to me. They don't usually use their real voices. They use these fake accents. So I am here to tell you, because of Alex's suggestion of rides that are on both coasts, that even though we have the exact same rides, not really. Because if we go through and talk about the exact same rides that are on both coasts, we only have a few. Number one, we have Toy Story Midway Mania. Now, Toy Story Midway Mania, or Toy Story Mania, depending on which coast you are on, is pretty much the exact same attraction. In fact, we do have the exact same screens. However, the rides between the different screens are a little bit different between each one, enough so that I do think it is a unique experience going to both of them, because there are different things and different details you can see in Disneyland that you can't see at Walt Disney World, and there are things that you can see at Walt Disney World that you can't see at Disneyland. However, the main game is the exact same thing. Same thing with the Little Mermaid attraction. Besides the queue in Walt Disney World is so much better in my opinion. But besides the queue, everything in the Disneyland version and the Walt Disney World version are pretty much the exact same thing. However, if you are in the Disneyland version, they do have Mr. Limpet, the Don Knotts character from a non-Disney film, as a fish is found in the Under the Sea segment, and no one knows why. I still don't know why. I've been looking for this for like 10 years trying to figure out why he's there, and there's not a solid answer out there on why. There's people who have said that this is the answer, but no one actually has a direct quote from the Imagineers. So let's move on. This is that we have Soarin'. Soarin' is going to be the exact same ride experience on both coasts, depending on the time of year that you go. Sometimes it is Soarin' around the world, and sometimes it is Soarin' over California in the California edition. While over here, it's mainly been Soarin' over the world. However, they did have over California edition around for the 100th anniversary special. In addition to that, we also have Mickey's PhilharMagic, the exact same attraction on both coasts. Now, going over to Disneyland / Magic Kingdom, it is a little bit more unique because most of the attractions might be the same attraction, but are completely different experiences in one way or another. One way or another. Now, the first one that I do want to point out is Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean is a much longer attraction over in Disneyland compared to how it is in Walt Disney World. Well, it's the opposite for Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion is a longer attraction in Disney World than it is in Disneyland. Then if you go over to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, it is the exact same track. However, it is a mirrored image of the track. So if you know the track like the back of your hand, like I do for Walt Disney World, when you go to Disneyland and you picture in your mind, okay, I'm going to be taking a right up here, but in reality, you're taking a left. It's the exact same attraction. It just does that. It's a mirrored image. Or really weird hand gestures. I don't know. One of the two. It's a Small World, has a completely different experience. The only real one that is found over in Disneyland that can also be found at Walt Disney World, and Disneyland Park, I should say, is Star Tours. Star Tours is the exact same attraction, but even Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, a lot of the same scenes. However, some of the things in between the scenes, completely different. And also, the Disneyland version of the attraction has a much better queue line than what we have here at Walt Disney World. And that is going to wrap up our short, that was a longer segment than I thought it was going to be, our short segment of rides that are on both coasts. Okay, we might only actually have time for one more. We'll see how the time is. Let's see how many numbers we have to add to this. Hey, Jeremy, how you doing? When I got my zero-turn lawnmower, I named it Mr. Toad, love it, like the ride. That's awesome. I miss Storybook. I miss Storybook too. Storybook Canal Boats is amazing. All right, so we've got 1 through 15. Let's do one more thing here, and then we are probably going to random. By the way, those people who are just joining us right now, we have been doing a completely random episode because it is our 777th episode, and we said it's kind of like a slot machine. So we've just been going through and doing random things all night long here, and this is going to bring us to possibly our very last one here. Let's see here. Modes of transportation. Okay, let's talk about the history of modes of transportation, because the history of modes of transportation is a very unique, very fun, very crazy history when you really, really think about it, because I have never really thought about it until I just started saying these words. And now I'm like, this is actually a very crazy history. So let's start off back in 1955, where we've started a lot of our topics of conversation tonight. Because back in 1955, when Disneyland would open up, we didn't have trams. We didn't have monorails. We didn't have Skyliners. We didn't have buses. We didn't have boats. We didn't have any of these things that were transporting guests to the park. Because you would park in a parking lot that was where California Adventure currently sits, and you would just walk. You take 15 steps from your car, and next thing you knew, you were at Disneyland Park. And it was a magical thing. It was a wonderful thing. And it would be like that forever. Well, until 1959. Because in 1959, we got our first mode of transportation, and it wasn't even a mode of transportation. Actually, still to this day in Disneyland, this is actually considered an attraction. Well, in Walt Disney World, this is considered a mode of transportation. And that, of course, is going to be the monorail. Now, the monorail would open up in 1959 on the same exact day that the Matterhorn would open up, and the exact same day that 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea would open up. It was a very ambitious day. It was a very big day for the Disney company, where they would go through and have these 3 different attractions open up. However, one of these attractions would pave the way for the future of what was going to happen in different Disney parks around the world. And that, of course, is the monorail. I've already given it away, so I'm not even going to like drag it on for a few more minutes of like suspense. So the monorail would open up in 1959, and when it opened up, it became a fan favorite. Everyone loved the monorail. They loved the idea of this highway in the sky, and people would, they would want to go on it over and over and over again in Disneyland, because again, it was a mode of transportation, or not a mode of transportation, it was an attraction. So because of the popularity of the monorail, when Disney was creating Walt Disney World, they decided that the most logical thing that they could do is build a monorail system. Now, let's talk a little bit about this, because up until we had Disneyland up until 1971, we still didn't really have any modes of transportation in Disneyland besides like the monorail. No, we would get the tram system for cars being parked, and they could go out from the parking lot into the front entrance of the park and drop guests off. But there wasn't anything real big. It wasn't a huge undertaking. It wasn't a whole lot of anything. Like literally, not much was going on out there, which is kind of surprising because 1971, everything happened. In 1971, we would get not just one, but two. No, three. That's right. Make it 4 modes of transportation that would open up in Walt Disney World. Our first one, obviously, the monorail. We've already talked about the monorail, but the monorail would have it so there was going to be 2 different lines that were taking guests from the Ticket and Transportation Center or from their resorts, the Polynesian or the Contemporary, to the entrance of the Magic Kingdom. You know those monorail beams that you still ride to this day? I rode both of them today, actually. Both of those have been around since 1971. We have had updates to the monorail system and the monorail tracks throughout the year, but essentially you are on the exact same track that you could have been on 53 years ago. So amazing monorail transportation that still takes guests around. Now, unlike the Disneyland counterpart, this was truly a mode of transportation because it was taking you from point A to point B, whether it was from the Ticket and Transportation Center over to the Magic Kingdom or from your resort to the Magic Kingdom or vice versa. That was the only way that you really could get there. But Disney wanted to have it so there was a little bit more here. So when you go to the Magic Kingdom, you usually have to park at the Ticket and Transportation Center unless you take a bus or unless, of course, you're parked at like Contemporary or Grand Floridian, where you can walk over from one of those 2 resorts. Now, in between all of this mumble jumble, we have the Seven Seas Lagoon, which a lot of people go, oh, it's amazing that Disney has this amazing pond out here. It's not a pond, it's a giant lake. We're going to still call it a pond because I feel like it's more hoity-toity when I say it that way. They like the idea of having this amazing pond out here in the middle. And when they have this amazing pond out here, most people don't realize that 1, it's not a pond, it's a lake. And 2, they all realize that. And 3, this is a completely man-made lagoon. That's right. The Seven Seas Lagoon is a completely man-made lagoon. However, the other side, the Bay Lake, that was originally there. But over here at the Seven Seas Lagoon, completely man-made. Now, the reason that I want to point out that it is man-made is because it's an important fact. Now, one of the reasons that Disney did this was to separate guests from the Magic Kingdom and the parking lot. They wanted to have it so the entire experience of going to the Magic Kingdom actually started from the moment you left the Ticket and Transportation Center into the Magic Kingdom. So when you hopped on that monorail or you hopped on that ferry boat, ding ding, our second mode of transportation, you would actually be going and transporting to a brand new world, which is going to be the Magic Kingdom itself. Why do they have it so it had to be a mile away? I don't know. But still, I do like the monorail ride. I do like the ferry boat ride. I just don't like the fact that I usually can't get to the Magic Kingdom on the days that I work because it is such a hassle to take the monorail or the ferry boat from the parking lot. And never mind. That's besides the point. So they would go through and they would have it so they had the ferry boat and the monorail on opening day, and all was right in the world. However, there was another thing here because yes, since opening day, guests could walk from the Contemporary over to the entrance of the Magic Kingdom, but that wasn't the most ideal situation for some people. Some people wanted to take the monorail, but if they wanted to take the monorail even on opening day, they would have to go all the way around the lagoon the other way, and that was just a longer option. So Disney decided to open up a boat service on the backside, and these boats would take you from either the Contemporary to the Magic Kingdom, or the Magic Kingdom to the Contemporary, or the Polynesian to the Magic Kingdom, or the Magic Kingdom to the Polynesian. So these 2 boat services were another brand new mode of transportation, and this is actually one of my favorite modes of transportation because these are smaller boats, and when they first opened up the Magic Kingdom, or when they were actually planning the Magic Kingdom, Disney had a massive, massive problem. They didn't know how to operate these boats. They built the boats, but they didn't know exactly how they're going to go through and do the operation of the boats. So the way that they actually came about doing this was ideally bringing in a master boatman, I don't know what to call him, a captain of a boat, and have it so he could train all the cast members on how to drive the boat efficiently. That was the ideal situation, but that's not how they did it. Instead, they let these college-age kids learn how to drive a boat and how to dock the boat and how to unload the boat and how to load the boat. And they had it so the cast members themselves would be the people who not only operated the boats, but also wrote the manual on how to go about operating the boats. So a lot of the operations for the boat services still to this day were actually written by a bunch of college-age cast members who didn't know how to operate a boat, but they learned in the moment. And that's how we got the mode of transportation of the boat. In addition to that one, we would go through and have it so Fort Wilderness Campground would open up later on that year in 1971. It would open up exactly 50 days after the Magic Kingdom Contemporary and the Polynesian open up. They would also have a fourth member of the transportation family join them, which would be the bus, which is now actually probably the most popular form of Disney transportation. Maybe not popular like, yeah, I love it, but more of like everyone takes, or a lot of people take the bus compared to the monorail or boats or the ferry boats or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are our first four modes of transportation. And then our next mode of transportation wouldn't open up for years and years and years and years, and that would be the Skyliner. Now, the Skyliner actually has a very interesting history about it. One of my friends is one of the Imagineers who actually worked on the Skyliner, and told the story one time online about how the Skyliner came about, and I think it's a fascinating story, and we're going to tell it right now. And then this might end up being our last one, unless, of course, if we went up from 75, 73 to 75, 74 on our subscribers, we'll do one more after this. But because this is mode of transportation is taking a lot longer than I thought I was going to do. So the Skyliner, the Skyway from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland, or that's from Tomorrowland to Fantasyland, was a popular attraction that was found in the Magic Kingdom for years and years and years and years. And then, of course, eventually they had to close it down in the early 1990s. And when they would go through and close it down, a lot of people just kind of, the polls came down. Not many people thought about it. And there was one day where the Imagineers were sitting around and they were trying to figure out different ways to solve the problems of buses, too many buses going around Disney parks. There was too many cars getting stuck in Disney parks. And they were trying to figure out the best way to kind of clear up the roads a little bit. And one person at this meeting suggested some crazy things like, hey, maybe we could have it so there's a monorail system that goes from Epcot to Hollywood Studios. And they said that would cost way too much money. It would put construction down for way too long. It would actually have more congestion waiting for it to be open. So let's not do that. And as they would go through and more people would throw out suggestions, one person said, I always like the Skyway system. Maybe we could bring the Skyway system to the resorts. And everyone stopped and they said, I like that idea. And that's actually how the Skyliner was born, was a group of people just kind of throwing different ideas out. And most of the ideas were ridiculous ideas. And then one person just kind of said, I really miss the Skyway buckets. Let's just bring that back. And that's actually how the Skyliner came about. So that is our history of the modes of transportation around Disney. All right, let's do a quick look at our subscriber count. We went up another one. Okay, we're going to do one more. This will be our last one of the night for sure. So let's do one more roll of the die to figure out what it's going to be. Number 7 we already did. Did we do that? I think we might have done this one. We did do that one. That's Pleasure Island. Oh my gosh, stop going on Pleasure Island. That's not it. It keeps. There we go. Finally, it gave us something else. Okay. Bing, 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 bing. All right, we're going to be closing up our show tonight with the last topic, which is going to be anything Disneyland. So let's do a quick anything Disneyland story, because there's a Disneyland story I just told to someone the other day, and I think it's kind of the perfect way for us to end tonight's episode, because it was one of those things that I was talking to some of my friends about my books. If you didn't already know, we got 4 books out. We got from Screen to Theme, we also have the Closer Look series, which takes a closer look at the lands of Fantasyland, Frontierland, and Liberty Square. And while I was going through and I was talking about it, they asked me how I got into the details of the parks. And I went through and I told them about my own personal backstory of the parks, which was, if you guys don't know, it's why I love the Rescuers so much. I was watching the parade one day and I noticed that Bernard and Bianca, very small, were in the front part of the float. And I was like, oh my gosh, the Rescuers. You never see anything with the Rescuers. And I became obsessed with trying to find all the different details for not just the Rescuers, but for everything throughout all the parks. And I started looking up, down, left, right, everything. It really took over my college program experience. And so I became obsessed with the details of the parks. And a few years later, I was listening to some old things with Walt Disney himself. And he talked about how there was one time he was walking through the park with one of his sponsors. And his sponsor said, we're giving you all this money. I don't understand why you had to put this thing in. And the thing he gestured towards was on the second floor, there was a little balcony with a window, outside of a window. And there was some plants there, a little chair there. And he said, why would you even have that up there? Like, why are you going to spend the money on some plant and some chairs and like a little patio area? It doesn't make any sense. No one can go up there. No one's even going to notice it. And Walt Disney's response was, but that's the thing. If it wasn't there, they would notice that it wasn't there. So that's why we put it in there, because it has to be in there to fit the whole story and the whole theme. And I think that's the perfect way for us to end the episode, because when you go through Disneyland, starting with Disneyland, it originally was not a area that focused solely on these details, and it didn't have it so you go through and you could find all these different things that we talk about on the show, or that we go through in my books. Like, all these different things that we've talked about weren't really around in 1955. They would slowly start to take form. And as time would go on, we'd get more and more details. We'd get more and more backstory. We'd get more and more fun facts. And it all kind of started back in the late 1950s when Walt Disney started to realize that, hey, these details actually do mean a lot. And the more that we have these details in, the more people are going to pay attention to them, and the more it gives the backstory of the story meaning, which makes people care about it more, which makes people appreciate it more, which makes people want to come back more, and maybe become true nerds and start writing books about it and doing podcasts about it for 777 episodes. So it all came down to the idea of details. And I think that's one of those most fascinating things. Is one of the things I love most about the Disney parks is you'll go on to these different people pages and websites and stuff that hate Disney, those stupid idiots. And they'll go through and they'll bash Disney and be like, I don't understand why these adults like Disney. It's a kids thing. But I don't think kids are really paying attention to things like the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. I don't think kids are really paying attention to the backstory of Tiana and Tiana's Bayou Adventure. I don't think they're looking for, which faces are the same faces in Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion, and which carvings are the same, and who the actual people in the tombstones are for Haunted Mansion. I don't think the kids are really focusing on why on earth do we have all these different mosaics at Cinderella's Cinderella Castle, and what's the story behind it, and why is Anastasia's face red and Drizelle's, why is hers green? Like, why? A lot of kids aren't paying attention to that. A lot of adults aren't paying attention to that too either. But the more you go there and the more details we focus on, especially the more focus that we focus on over the last 777 weeks, the more meaning the place has and the more backstory. Disneyland and Disney World and all the Disney parks around the world, there's all these different puzzle pieces that are slowly coming out, and you'll go through, and every time you go there, you might find another piece of the puzzle, and you place it next to this other piece, and you take this piece and you put it next to this piece, and slowly you start to form this massive, elaborate story that's going on. And that all goes back to Walt Disney telling that guy, if that wasn't there, people wouldn't notice it. And if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for Walt Disney standing up for the idea that, yes, we need this balcony and this chair and this plant up there because people would notice if it was missing, if it wasn't for that, I don't think we would still have a Disneyland today. I think we would, and I think the puzzle pieces that we've been putting together for our lives and trying to figure out the entire story that's taking place, it wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that moment. So that is going to be our final segment for tonight's jackpot episode. Ching, 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 ching. As always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. Thank you to our Patreon pals for being our sponsors for tonight's episode. You guys are awesome. If you're a Patreon pal and you're watching right now, throw an "oh yeah" in the chat room. Okay. Also, thank you everyone out there for joining us once again tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed this really random episode. I wasn't sure what we were going to be doing at all. But I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like an Ask the Expert, but it wasn't at all. Like, it was like more of like you guys just throwing things at me and then me being like, haha, let me tell you a story for the next 15 minutes. And I like telling stories. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I enjoyed. And I guess that's all that matters sometimes. Because people are like leaving the chat room. They're like, yeah, I'm out of this way. Get out of here, kid. But thank you everyone out there for joining us tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, if you're not already subscribed, then make sure you subscribe. And remember that anything can happen if you let it. Until next time, have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Bye-bye now. Goodbye now. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Are they gone? Are they gone? Well, good. My cheeks are just killing me. I just can't